Hey. Hello. Hi. My name is Erica Joy Baker, known to some of you as just Erica Joy. I've worked in tech for nearly 2 decades, beginning working as a Windows system administrator at the University of Alaska, winding my way through Home Depot, Google, and Slack to land at Patreon, where I am currently a senior engineering manager. I grew up taking things apart and putting them back together again. I was the person who set the clock on the VCR. I was the person to install the CD-ROM drive in the computer and upgrade the computer to a shocking 1 gigabyte hard drive. I was one of the first people to use that newfangled World Wide Web with Netscape Navigator when it first came out. I had a GeoCities page, an AngelFire page, and a tripod page. And while on a social network that existed well before Facebook or MySpace, I taught thousands of people how to use HTML. I'm sharing all that because some of you know me as that lady who talks about diversity and inclusion all the time, a subject I'm extremely passionate about, but maybe you don't know that I'm a dyed-in-the-wool, spent my formative years growing up with the internet nerd. I spend a lot of time talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion because it's important to me to build a tech industry that is open and welcoming for all, and rejects the ridiculous on its face idea that only one sort of person is meant to be in it. Normally, that's what I'd be up here talking about, but today I want to talk about something a little different. Today I want to talk to you about changing the world. First, I'd like to read you some real-life quotes. Innovative data solutions, companies on pace to change the world. The Economist, autonomous vehicles will change the world. Google for Entrepreneurs creates campuses, physical hubs where entrepreneurs can learn, connect, and build companies that will change the world. OtterBox grows to give back by inspiring kids to change the world through entrepreneurship and philanthropy. As a creator of the first ever on-demand service for designated drivers, CEO Evan Stafford is on an ambitious mission to change the world, one ride at a time. Import.io enables customers to tap into the power of data to change the world. Slang is universal and could be the driving factor that brings us together and one day possibly change the world, said Edwin Benton, CEO and founder of Slang & Friends. It seems like everyone wants to change the world, from big tech companies to little startups, and I am so pleased to announce to you today, we did it. Woo! We changed the world. We've created the tools of modern revolutions. We've helped give platforms to folks who didn't have them previously. We changed how people travel from point A to point B. We changed where people stay on vacation. We changed how they communicate, how they date, how they eat, how they create, how they get news, how they play games, how they do laundry, how they exercise, how they buy furniture, how they design with that furniture, how they find housing, how they get paid, how they get medical care, how they do pretty much everything. Mission accomplished. We changed the world. And now we're going to have to do it again. Because see, we neglected to do one major important thing. We didn't finish the statement. We didn't say how we were going to change the world. We did not say in what ways we wanted to change the world. We just said we wanted to change the world. The result was that we ended up changing the world in ways we didn't think about. We ended up changing the world in ways we didn't expect. In building a better search engine, we built an ad targeting mega machine, setting that as a norm for generating revenue on the internet. To build better ad targeting, we began sucking up every little bit of information we could get about people, whether they wanted us to or not. In trying to connect everyone, we built tools of mass harassment. In trying to better reach out to people who we might like to hire, we built actual legitimized doxing machines. A better way to share pictures came with increased focus on curating the best version of oneself, with everyone else trying to live up to those unrealistic images. Better phones and access to the internet resulted in greater disconnection and loneliness. And in trying to build better social networks to recover those lost feelings of connection, of belonging, we built great propaganda machines that are easily manipulable by major nation states to effectively influence an election, such that the most qualified person to ever run for president in the US lost to a charlatan not worth his weight in feathers. We got so focused on disruption that we didn't stop to think about who or what we were disrupting. So we need to start over and finish the statement. We want to change the world for the better, for everybody. And that, friends, is where things get a little more complicated. The tech industry runs on venture capital. Venture capital is represented on the boards of nearly every tech company that has taken VC funding. So while the founders of every tech company might have idealistic notions of changing the world, the people they answer to have one goal and one goal only: make money. And if they're lucky, spawn more companies that can make even more money. If VCs say we want to help you change the world, there is a silent, as long as you're making us more money, that goes along with that. And if you aren't making them money, well, then they use their board power to oust you from the company you founded to replace you with someone who will make them money and worry less about changing the world. Slap some ads on it, sell some customer data, make deals with the lowest of the low, as long as it's making money. Thankfully, it doesn't need to be this way. It's possible to build companies that are sustainable, that grow without VC funding, that make choices that are in the best interest of customers, that don't sacrifice values on the altar of growth, that don't sell out what we know is right for the almighty dollar or your chosen currency. Take Mailchimp. From the ashes of the dot-com bust, Mailchimp was born in 2001. Now, 17 years later, Mailchimp is bringing in over $500 million in revenue a year with no VC funding. They grew slowly and sustainably and are now able to employ nearly 1,000 people across 3 cities. They did not try to get rich quick. They had a mission and slowly iterated on that mission and have changed how many of us both send and receive mail. Mailchimp showed us that we can think of our work in tech as sustainable careers instead of gold rushes. Instead of always fighting to have the next big payout, the next big IPO, the next big whatever, we can work more thoughtfully on how we change the world for the better. That for every decision, it's possible to say, I can do this, but should I do this? And when that answer is no, we, not being driven by the urgent race to growth, can do the right thing. You can be the person who fights for the customer. Sometimes that fight means you have to leave the company, but it's what you have to do. Because ultimately, how we're going to change the world is by the legacies we leave behind. Tech is going to be here long after us. And whether we found companies or projects, or we work our way up someone else's ladder, what we build will have some effect on the world. And by build, I don't just mean products, I mean companies too. See, we're at the beginning of the AI, VR, and machine learning revolutions. We are building not just the products, but the companies that will power tomorrow, and it is extremely important that those companies represent everyone. Now, I said I wasn't going to talk about diversity, but I guess I told a little fib. Let's go back to the beginning where we changed the world the wrong way. Not only weren't we thinking about the products we were building, but we weren't thoughtful and intentional about the companies we were building. We pattern matched based on 1 or 2 stereotypes of what we thought success looked like, and wound up with homogenous workforces who couldn't understand or relate to the lived experiences or history of the people we were trying to serve. We wound up with algorithms that called Black people monkeys, and wrongly predicted Black people would always be likely to recommit crimes. We wound up with the tools of mass harassment because the people building social networks had never understood what it was like to be vulnerable, to be harassed, to be stalked. We ultimately built products and services that solved problems for the homogenous group of people in our companies, while creating new problems for many of the people not represented by our employees. This is why we must build companies that represent everyone and all experiences, so that when we are building the future, we're not making the same mistakes of our racist, sexist, homophobic past. This is how we really change the world for the better. Okay, so let me be clear. Everything isn't doom and gloom. Before VCs and ads and hypergrowth became the name of the game, the tech industry did some good stuff. When I was 15, just after the World Wide Web was born, my first instinct was to talk to other people, and I found Blues Traveler chat. While it was not the most popular chat room, because Blues Traveler, it gave me a window into experiences that weren't like mine. I learned what life was like for a young white man who lived an entire continent away in the Deep South, who had just had a daughter and was struggling to figure out how to raise a family. For no other reason but the internet would I have had an opportunity to connect with that young man and form a friendship that lasts to this day, 20 years later. In fact, I'll probably see him and his daughter this Thanksgiving. For him and for everyone else in that chat room, I was just another person they talked to. They did not see my skin color. They would not have known my gender had I not told them. They just knew what my very embarrassing, chosen by a 15-year-old handle was. No, I'm not going to tell you what it was. In that chat room, we shared ideas. In that chat room, we formed friendships. We had relationships. And that showed me what the true power of technology was. As I alluded to earlier, I've been all over the internet in the past 20 years. I've watched it grow and I've watched it change. I've watched the internet become less of a place where you can connect with anyone, no matter who they are or where they're from, but instead be a place where you find people to hate. That pull towards hate, that pull towards being our worst selves online disappoints me because I know, I've experienced that we have the tools to build a better world in our hands. But we have to have the right incentives to do that. Though Twitter has become a distributed harassment system, in its early days, it was just like Blues Traveler Chat was for me 20 years ago, a way to connect people who were seeking to find community. And that's what Twitter was meant to do. Had they had the incentives to build in tools to handle abuse and harassment early on, imagine what Twitter could be today. Imagine it being a tool not only to find community, to share ideas, to connect people who aren't like each other, who can then learn from one another, but it could be that while also amplifying voices of those who previously didn't have platforms but had important messages, like Tarana Burke with Me Too, or Patrice Cullors, Ali Garza, and Opal Tometi with the Black Lives Matter movement, movements that are changing the world in positive directions. We can return to that. That vision of the internet, of technology, of the world, needn't elude us. We can make this world better. We can build systems that connect people without exposing them to harm. We can build systems that help people find therapists. And shout out to therapy, which is wonderful, and I hope all of you go. I would not be here today without finding a therapist in 2014. We can build systems that educate, that inform, and that encourage critical thinking. We can build systems that help solve inequity in our justice systems. We can build companies where everyone is represented and has the same opportunities for success and growth. We can do all these things and change the world in doing it. But first, we must undo the harmful changes we made. So this is my call to action. If you work at a company you know is doing something harmful that you've averted your eyes from, now is the time to speak up and say something, to do something. And if it's not safe for you to speak up, find an ally or accomplice who will speak up for you. If you know that your company is misusing user data, is making deals that will put people in harm's way, is building a better way to kill people, is censoring people or ideas on behalf of governments, or is giving people with power the tools to enact harm and destruction on a global scale, now is the time to speak up. Now is the time to revert the negative changes we made in service of getting rich so that we can build up our industry in service of changing the world in a way that is more kind, more equitable, and more just. Thank you for taking the time to be here today. Shout out to everybody who flew up here after voting last night. You are all appreciated, you all matter, you are all supported, you are all believed in, and I believe you can all change the world for the better. Have a good evening.